I'm a sex, love, and relationship addict. And I'm connected to more of a earth-based tradition in my spiritual practice. And so I would like to begin by drumming just briefly as a way of connecting to the Mother Earth. Some in my tradition that I've been trained in is called our Pachamama, our Mother Earth, and to connect with the heartbeat of the Mother. And so that's the intention with my drum. And then I'd like to say a prayer. Again, it's what I do daily is I pray, but I'm going to share it with you today because these are the practices that keep me emotionally and sexually sober. Mother, Father, Creator, thank you for being with me as I share today. Thank you for this beautiful body of earth that my body comes from. May I remember the sacredness of all life and open my heart to my original wholeness. Help me remember I am connected to the miracle of creation and that no wound is too great to separate me from your grace. May my words be filled with your essence of love and peace. Thank you. Blessed be. The third sign of recovery in S.L.A.A. is we surrender one day at a time our whole life strategy of and our obsession with the pursuit of romantic and sexual intrigue and emotional dependency. And this has been the work of my life, captured in that one statement. I entered S.L.A.A. in August of 2013. I was desperate to change my life before I completely self-destructed. I was at an emotional and spiritual bottom after breaking up with a woman I met 6 months earlier on a dating site. I allowed myself to be mistreated. Every time I tried to leave that toxic situation, I once again believed all those pretty lies rather than face the roaring vortex of my own emptiness. I wrote in my journal that I lost control and I felt like I was addicted to this person I didn't even like. She actually scared me, and yet I was more afraid of facing my own demons that I had been running from for decades. I've had a series of relationships based on patterns that began in my family from the moment I was born. It has taken me a lifetime of hitting the same wall and falling into a pit of despair with many different people. It's hard to talk about these things, but I know that it's part of the program and part of my service today to go into the places where I'm the most vulnerable, where I've experienced the most shame, and felt incredible pain, so that I can give you an idea of what it's like to come through it and be in the solution, in recovery. So I'm very grateful, even though it's hard to talk about these things, that I have the opportunity to be in service today. I've wandered around the world in search of my true love, literally. I finally found her in the mirror of truth I discovered by entering the 12 steps of SLAA. It is a path of spiritual awakening and transformation. I also discovered ACA, which is another 12-step program. And I walked into those rooms in 1986 and began working the 12 steps to reparent my wounded inner children. Even with the love of my higher power and fellow travelers' support, I was still chasing a dream that was based in fantasy. My will was forged by a passion for a love that could never exist as long as I continued to project my own unhealed past onto others. I had to face my need to rescue or be rescued, my dependent personality seeking love outside of myself that could help me feel whole and loved. I was making the person I loved into an object of worship. I lost myself and any hope of real love by doing this. And what I've discovered in my time of healing, which has been many decades, is that I was fused with the victim archetype, but also the healer. And I was both, and I was neither. And I was caught in that loop. And it was coming out in all my relationships. It was like a role that I was cast in that was my survival. And yet it was killing me, and it was destroying any hope I had of any true intimacy. Although I've had some relationships that appeared sort of healthy, there was always a ticking time bomb in my heart. I practiced a form of serial monogamy, so I was never alone physically. And yet I was always alone because deep inside me, I didn't believe anyone could really love me or that I was actually worthy of real love. And that's hard to say, but it's true. I chose people who were not emotionally or even physically available because I wasn't actually available to real intimacy myself. I was full of trauma, and I had a pretty veneer covering it up while I worked furiously inside myself trying to figure it out and change it. No matter how hard I tried, I could not transform my early imprints that became relentless patterns. So I'm going to go into that a little bit right now. I'm the fourth child of 7 children from an extremely religious family. And I was the 3rd girl in a row that was born to my mother, who wanted a boy. My mother gave birth to my brother when I was 2.5 years old, and I lost my mother almost completely at that time. My father gave me some positive attention for a couple of years, and I wanted more. At 5, my father rejected me and became punishing. I could not gain his or my mother's positive attention. And my mother turned her back to me as my father engaged my older siblings and even my younger brother in daily rounds of scapegoating. By the time I was 5, I had experienced intermittent love and attention followed by emotional abuse and neglect from my parents. As a child, I was not hugged or touched affectionately. The only touch was from punishment or when I was sick and my mother would feel my forehead or trying to find out if I had a fever, or she would also touch my neck, to see if my glands were swollen. And that was the only touch I got, which actually encouraged me to get sick because then I might get touched in a positive or at least seemingly nurturing way. I had an older sister. I had two older sisters. One was hardly ever around, and the other one, who was 5 years older than me, was the only one in the whole family who showed much interest in me. But she also had a personality disorder, and that created the same pattern of intermittent love and attention mixed with cruelty and abandonment. And she was good at it. To this day, me and my other siblings are pretty scared of her because of that tendency. But this was where I learned to tolerate pain in order to receive moments of affection. I found ways to substitute a lack of healthy attention with distraction and fantasy. I became addicted to sugar. I watched a lot of TV, and I was very young, but I still was especially drawn to romantic movies and movies about families. I listened to love songs, and I was trying to fill myself up with what a loving family or romantic relationship might feel like. I really wanted to be special to someone. I wanted to be seen and heard and loved for being me. Between the ages of 8 and 11, I became invisible in my family. My father worked in the day to make money, and then he accepted a role of leadership at the church we belonged to. And that took him away at night and on the weekends. On some level, my child mind at that age began to feel that negative attention was better than no attention at all. By 11 years old, I began to act out and act in by smoking, drinking, hanging out with older kids until midnight, while no one in my family even noticed. I began fantasizing about a girl that was a grade older than me when I was 8 years old. I didn't understand my feelings for her, and I was too shy to talk to her or tell anyone else. And that began my life of obsession. I carried a romantic torch of fantasy for someone always slightly out of reach from that point on until I found recovery, and even in my recovery. At 13 years old, I fell in love with my girlfriend. I had the courage to reach out to her, and she responded. We kissed. It was the most incredible feeling I could have ever imagined, and my fantasy then became a reality. And we began to discover our affection for each other. My mother read my diary, and after that, my world fell apart quickly and badly. 6 months after that first lover's kiss, I was placed in a state mental institution by my parents. I was locked up and treated for my aberrant sexual behavior. I was admitted to a so-called hospital exactly 53 years ago today. That's a big deal. From the age of 13 to 15 years old, I experienced physical, emotional, and sexual violence. I endured medical, psychiatric, and religious abuse. I lost my home. I lost my freedom. I lost my innocence. I lost what was left of my childhood. I refused to deny my love and attraction for women, and I suffered the consequences for that.
That's 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. When I was 18 years old, I left home so I could be free to love a woman. I became part of a political movement, and I really dedicated my life to creating change so that I would be free to love who I chose to love, and that others could too. So my whole life, what got me through being institutionalized and then being under house arrest from 15 to 18, only allowed to go to church and school and then work, was to believe in love. But I was searching to find out what real love was, because I didn't really know then. I know where my patterns of sex and love addiction come from. I've worked my whole adult life trying to heal myself, and I could not do it alone. I couldn't recognize or create a healthy lover relationship when I was full of all that trauma that I had come from. I had to untangle my whole twisted life in order to discover what a sexually healthy, loving relationship might be. How could I have done any better with what I went through? And today I love my brave inner teenager. I've brought her home and I've integrated her by listening to her whole story and loving her unconditionally. I'm not ashamed about that time in my life anymore. It still hurts, I have to admit. And there's some things that will probably always hurt and things that I won't want to talk about in detail. But I don't feel like I need to hide it anymore. In fact, I actually wrote a book and published it about that time in my life as an act of self-love. And also it was through spiritual intervention and a lot of other people who encouraged me, especially my advisor in my master's degree program said, you must publish this story. And it took all the courage I had to face it, put all that fragmented traumatic time together, and with the spiritual love of my higher power, write that story with love for that girl that I was, that went through all of that. It was a great healing for me. And I hope it's a great healing for others who go through things that make us become exiles of ourselves, that make us run away from reality by grabbing hold of something or someone else. I've done that long enough. I want to come home now. I want to be whole. I entered these rooms in 2013 on my hands and knees, bleeding from my soul's wounds. I was at an emotional, sexual, and spiritual bottom. My will had not created what I dreamed of. Honestly, my demons surrounded me, and it felt like they began to howl. I had to face them in a way I never had before, or I knew I would die. But I wanted to live, and I didn't know how to end the cycles of highs followed by crash after crash in my life. I now start every day with the Serenity Prayer. Thy will, not mine, be done. I live these words rather than just saying them. They are literally alive in me. I no longer project fantasy onto myself or others. I don't deflate or inflate myself. It's really important to me to stay humble. And life and my higher power and coming to these rooms helps me do that. I found a sponsor in my first 2 weeks of discovering S.L.A.A., and I worked diligently with her to explore the steps, focusing on my sex, love, and relationship addiction. I followed her advice and stopped trying to find someone to be with. I faced my loneliness and my obsession. I went through a long, brutal 9-month withdrawal. I attended 12-step meetings nearly every single day, and I sacrificed my time and energy that I would normally use to work and travel in order to devote myself to my recovery. So I stayed home and I just stopped everything. And I even suffered some significant losses because of that in a physical way, the things, but it was the sacrifice I needed to make for my recovery. After 5 years of that, I felt strong and supported enough to date. Then I was quickly humbled and lost ground by immediately allowing my boundaries to be broken by someone who had a love interest in me. That person fit my pattern. I discovered that I was still unhealed. I experienced 2 back-to-back serious romances over a 2-year period. I broke up in the midst of the pandemic and moved back north just in time for my first winter in 13 years. I was heartbroken, I was isolated, and I was grieving deeply. My immune system crashed and I developed a chronic illness. I didn't know if I would ever recover from that. And yet, all this hardship that happened to me held a gift. I found a sponsor who was willing to walk through the steps with me again. This was an extraordinary sponsor. I am so grateful for her. She's with me today, and she is with me on this path in a way that I don't really have words to describe. But this time, I went deeper in the steps than I ever had before. I felt my feelings. They stretched all the way back to my original wounds. I worked my steps and grieved deeply. I realize now how the 12 steps are a circle, maybe even a spiral that becomes a labyrinth of initiation. Falling apart is necessary. Pain is part of the process. I had to sacrifice my ego and my will if I wanted to get better. I let my old self shatter consciously in the safety of the steps with my sponsor as my sacred witness and my guide. I gave and received support from sister and fellow travelers on their journey of recovery. In my earlier recovery, I missed some of the miracles of transformation by running too fast through the steps, by not feeling my whole grief or examining all its parts. I had not fully surrendered. I needed to have complete faith in a higher power to love me in order to heal and transform the twisted survival traits that I had learned as a child. I have now experienced the transformation that is promised in steps 6 and 7. I do feel worthy of being seen and heard. I am saved by a power of love that teaches me every day to be in service to my own and others, continuing awakening from this terrible disease of addiction. I catch myself quickly when I start to distract and dissociate from my feelings. This is big because I learned to be an expert of dissociating. I could be in and out of my body so fast. It took a lot of practice to unhinge that mechanism in me and call myself, all the fragmented parts of me, home. And I feel like they're all in now and still in a process of integration, all these different times in my life where I shattered out. And I'm listening to my body and my inner children. I'm no longer ignoring or overriding their needs and their messages. I trust and respect myself because I'm living in the present moment and trusting in a power greater than myself. And this is the key. So now my friendships are changing. I'm attracting healthier, more conscious people into my life. I'm clearer about who to trust and who not to allow into my inner circle of self. And in my journal, and I'm a journal keeper since I've been 10 years old, that was one of the good habits that I created. I actually drew a circle and put myself in an inner circle that only maybe God and very, very trusted people can get into. And then there's a larger circle that my closest friends, allies are in. And then I have outer circles where there are other kinds of people in my life that come and go. And I don't have to throw them out completely, but I just need to have a boundary with them. And these are things I didn't learn until late in life. And they've actually really, really helped me. So I'm attracting these healthier people now. And I'm clear about who to trust and who not to allow in. I'm resisting being pulled into drama, and I'm resisting my own tendency to create it. And I have very stealthy ways of creating drama I have had to take responsibility for. I can feel a sense of what a healthy, loving relationship and partnership can be for me now. This has been something that came about in a beautiful way during the winter of the pandemic, when I ended up in, a cold climate after living in a tropical one and going through all this grief, so isolated. My sponsor suggested that I make a vision board or like a treasure map of what I wanted in a partnership. And to do it visually was really, especially as an artist, to do that was very empowering. It took me over a month to do it. I spent a lot of time on it because I knew I was putting together a part of my inner self as I was putting together these pieces of what I could imagine a healthy, intimate partnership could be for me, and literally sending that out to the universe as a form of prayer. And I'm open now to my higher power bringing me together with someone who has done their inner work and is willing to continue to grow. I can feel the real possibility now of being in a reciprocal relationship as two people who are whole and can be both independent and interdependent. This is because I love myself. I respect myself. I have a primary relationship with my higher power. I'm no longer attracted to domineering, narcissistic people who are not capable of really loving. This is a big miracle in my life. I believe I'm experiencing real love right now, and that love will naturally flow into more harmony in all my relationships. It's already happening. And when it's time, I will open my heart again and share the great gift and mystery of intimate sexual love in a committed relationship. I'm not quite there yet, and that's okay. Thanks to this spiritual program, my sponsor, the company of others courageously striving for their own recovery, who also are supporting mine, I am living in the blessings. I believe at this time that I have surrendered my old miserable life strategy for the safety of the steps guiding me in everything I do. I live the steps every single day of my life. They, especially steps 1, 2, and 3, is like waking up and doing those steps in my own mind and dedicating my life to my higher power. Thy will be done. I'm living in the solution with a focus on my top lines. I exercise, I eat healthy, I meditate and pray, I dance and I sing, and I play. I have playmates now. I have friends I can go out and just do fun things. I let my inner children have the joy and the childhood that I lost. I'm choosing now to be grateful for everything, even the challenges and the losses in my life. This is because I'm no longer a victim to that repeating tragic story of loss and pain. I have become the love I searched everywhere for, and I would have continued to had I not found these programs.
15 minutes left.
Thank you so much. This solution, this love, was actually here inside me all along. I just had to be still and let go of what I was clinging to. I trusted this 12-step spiritual path, and it is leading me home after many, many decades of being lost. I can't tell you how many homes I have been in and let go of, and moved and moved and moved around. And I have always painted it as this wonderful thing, that I was this free spirit. And I have experienced so many wonderful, amazing things in this country and in other countries. But the truth is, and I can say it here, is that I was running away and I was hiding in who I was trying to be, not really believing it inside me. And I even became a leader and took on a lot of responsibility and started a nonprofit program and did all these things while a part of me was bleeding to death inside. I'm not anymore. I do feel whole, and I know I have a long way to go, but I don't intend to leave this world anytime soon. I'll keep coming back here. I'm deeply grateful for this transformation that is continuing to unfold in my life. And I wanted to share that I recently went to Chicago. Last week, I was with my family and friends, and I felt different. I noticed other people were responding me. They were responding to me differently. And one of my friends told me that she said I looked really different. She kept looking at me. She's like, "You're really different. You're so relaxed. You seem so peaceful." And then this other woman told me the next day, she said, "You look years younger and lighter." And I'm thinking, well, I'm not doing anything but recovery right now. And I think what has helped me is loving myself, learning to love myself, to, before I go to bed at night, to look in the mirror and say, "You did a good job today. I know I didn't do this too well or that too well." And that's what I used to beat myself with before I went to bed all the time. But now I look in the mirror and say, "Wow, you did this today. This was wonderful. Thank you so much. I love you." And I also have a picture of all my inner children with smiles on, which were actually hard to find, in a collage on my mirror. So I can see the joy that was always there in me, that just wanted to come up to the surface, but didn't have very many supports. And I had a tremendous amount of obstacles as a child. But now I have my higher power. I have these rooms and all of you, and I have my sponsor, and I have this opportunity to literally live this transformation that's possible by working these steps and living them. So I feel like I'm emerging from a cocoon and discovering a new, beautiful self. I have wings. I'm again going to say I'm grateful to my sponsor who's loved me through all the hell of this dissolving of my old self. That was so much less than my potential. She kept believing in me, as I unfolded the truth of what my life really was and took off the veneer. She stood sturdy and steady by me. She was like my tree, rooted while I was shaking and crying. And I felt like she helped me go through this labyrinth of initiation and be reborn. We can't do it alone. I couldn't do it in isolation from my shame keeping me silent. I talked about everything. I let it all out. So I just want to say to my sponsor, thank you so much. If it wasn't for your support, I don't know how I would have made it through the last year and a half of my life. And because of this journey I've been on, I am a new person. I am a true person. I am the person that I was born to be. And now I have a chance to discover who that is, how that is in this lifetime from this point on. So in closing, I want to share with you that I am experiencing more emotional sobriety, and I am living in the SLAA signs of recovery. So I have changed them to personalize them. I have a daily relationship with my higher power. My faith is restored by my willingness to be vulnerable I continue to surrender my whole life strategy of and my obsession with the pursuit of romantic and sexual intrigue and emotional dependency. I have learned to avoid situations that put me at risk physically, morally, psychologically, and spiritually. I have learned to accept and love myself. I take responsibility for my own life. I can take care of my own needs before involving myself with others. I work through the pain of my low self-esteem and my fear of abandonment. I take responsibility for myself. I feel comfortable in solitude. I accept my imperfections as part of being human, healing my shame and perfectionism. I substitute honesty for self-destructive ways of expressing emotions and feelings. I am honest in expressing who I am, developing true intimacy in my relationship with myself and others. I am learning to value sex as a natural development of sharing, commitment, trust, and cooperation in an intimate partnership. I am being restored to sanity on a daily basis by participating in this process of recovery. So I want to thank you for hearing my experience, strength, and hope today, and for joining me on this incredible journey of recovery. It takes a lot of courage to show up here in these rooms and be a member of this fellowship in particular. So thank you for your support, for sharing with me today, your attention and your willingness to hear my story. And in closure, I would like to sing to you. Not that I'm a singer, but it's part of my spiritual practice to sing and dance. And it's a song maybe some of you even know. Again, in the earth-based traditions, we pass around these rounds, these songs. So I'd like to sing to you, to your inner children, to any part of you that's been in exile in your life. May all your wounded parts come home, find the love, and experience the transformation that you are capable of, so that your true love can be found inside you and then reflected in others. May you walk in beauty in a sacred way. May you walk in beauty each and every day. May the beauty of the fire lift your spirit higher. May the beauty of the earth fill your heart with mirth. May the beauty of the rain wash away your pain. May the beauty of the sky teach your mind to fly. May you walk in beauty in a sacred way. May you walk in beauty each and every day. Thank you so much. Blessed be.